my cousin's phone buzzed on the mahogany table, cutting through the chatter. A news alert flashed. Historic settlement. Carter and Brooks Law secures $75 million in consumer protection cases. My stomach twisted as I watched her scroll past it, not even pausing. If only they knew I'm Emily Harper, the one who spent her whole life chasing a sliver of this family's attention. Here I am, standing in my parents' sprawling living room in their upscale Chicago suburb home, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and polished hardwood floors during our annual family gathering. Yet I'm invisible. My dad's voice boomed over the clinking glasses. William Harper, always the center of it all. Olivia just sealed another massive deal, he said, his chest puffed out like a proud rooster. That's my girl, always climbing higher, just like I taught her. I took a slow sip of my wine, the bitter taste mirroring my mood. The glass caught the afternoon light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the floor. More attention than I ever get at these things. I scanned the room. Relatives swarmed around my sister, Olivia, like bees to honey. Her sleek blazer and confident smile screamed success. Harper Enterprises, her company, was the talk of the town. Meanwhile, I stood by the fireplace, clutching my drink, my navy suit feeling like armor against their indifference. Nobody asked about my work. Nobody ever does. Emily, dear, my aunt called, her voice syrupy. Still tinkering with those little lawsuits of yours? I forced a smile, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. Oh, keeping busy, I said, my tone light but sharp. She nodded, already turning back to Olivia's orbit. Typical. I've always been the shadow in this family. Growing up in Chicago, I watched Olivia soak up every ounce of praise. Her debate trophies lined the shelves, while my science fair ribbons gathered dust in a drawer. I was 12 when I told Dad I wanted to be a lawyer. He chuckled, patted my head, and said, "Sweetheart, maybe try teaching. It's more fitting." I proved him wrong, graduating top of my class from Northwestern Law. But even that didn't shift the spotlight. The living room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. My mom, Grace, floated through the crowd, her silver earrings glinting as she played the perfect hostess. She caught my eye and gave a small, apologetic smile before turning to refill someone's drink. That smile said it all. I see you, but I can't fix this. I swallowed the lump in my throat and looked away. Olivia's laugh rang out, bright and commanding. She was recounting some boardroom victory, her hands gesturing animatedly. Dad hung on her every word, nodding like she was delivering a TED Talk. I leaned against the wall, my mind drifting to the late nights at Carter and Brooks, poring over case files, fighting for clients who'd been crushed by corporate giants. $75 million. A landmark win. And not one person here cared. I remembered being 10, sitting at the dining table in our old house on Lakeview Drive. Olivia, 2 years older, had just won a school election. Dad ruffled her hair and said, "You're going places, kid." I'd shown him my model for a water filtration system that same day, a project I'd spent weeks on. He glanced at it, mumbled, "Nice work," and went back to Olivia's campaign posters. That was the moment I realized I'd always be second best. Emily. My cousin's voice snapped me back to the present. She waved her phone, oblivious to the article she'd just dismissed. "You gotta see this meme. Hilarious." I faked a laugh, my eyes lingering on the screen. The headline about my case was still there, mocking me. I turned away, the weight of it all pressing down. I slipped toward the edge of the room, needing air. The chatter faded as I stepped onto the patio, the Chicago skyline faint in the distance. The cool breeze did little to ease the ache in my chest. This was my family, my home, but I'd never felt more alone. 3 years of my life poured into that lawsuit, and they didn't even know. They didn't want to know. I gripped the railing, staring at the manicured lawn. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for their approval. Maybe it was time to make them see me, whether they liked it or not. The thought sparked something fierce inside me, a fire I'd kept buried too long. This wasn't over. Not yet. I stepped back into the living room, the warmth of my parents' Chicago home wrapping around me like a too-tight hug. The chatter swelled, a symphony of clinking glasses and forced laughter. My sister, Olivia, stood at the center of it all, her voice carrying over the crowd like a radio host. "And just like that, we landed the partnership," she said, her hands painting the air. "Harper Enterprises is set to dominate the market." The room erupted in applause, my dad, William, leading the charge with a grin that could light up Lake Michigan. I lingered by the doorway, my wine glass cool against my palm. Olivia's victory was the only story here, as always. Nobody noticed me. Emily Harper, the lawyer who just won a $75 million lawsuit that reshaped an entire industry. Nobody cared. Emily, there you are, Sarah, Olivia's wife, glided over, her smile as polished as the marble floors. "Still doing that little lawyer thing? Are you actually practicing?" Her tone dripped with something sharp, like lemon in a paper cut. I forced a smile, my jaw tight. "Yep, still at it," I said, keeping my voice even. "Carter and Brooks keeps me busy." "Oh, that's cute," Sarah said, her eyes already drifting back to Olivia. "You know, Harper Enterprises just had its best quarter ever. Olivia's talking about expanding to New York." Before I could respond, Dad's voice cut through the room like a foghorn. "Everyone, gather round. Olivia has something to say." The family swarmed my sister like moths to a porch light. I stayed back, watching my mom, Grace, from across the room. She adjusted her pearl necklace, her eyes meeting mine for a fleeting second. Another apologetic smile, then she turned to Olivia, her golden child. I bit my lip, the sting of it grounding me. Olivia raised her glass, her blazer catching the chandelier's glow. "We just signed a deal that'll change everything," she said, her arm around Sarah's waist. The timing was perfect. Recent regulatory changes really tipped the scales in our favor. I nearly choked on my wine. Those regulatory changes? They came from my lawsuit. My 3 years of sleepless nights, fighting corporate giants in courtrooms from Chicago to Springfield. But of course, Olivia had no clue. "That's my girl," Dad said, clapping Olivia's shoulder. "Always knows how to seize the moment." Even when she was a kid, she was sharp like that. I slipped away, my heels clicking on the hardwood as I headed for the kitchen. I needed a breather, somewhere away from the Olivia Harper fan club. The kitchen was quiet, the granite countertops gleaming under soft lights. I set my glass down and leaned against the island, the cool stone grounding me. A moment later, the door swung open. Mia, my best friend and fellow lawyer, stepped in, her dark curls bouncing. I'd dragged her along for moral support, and thank God for that. "You okay?" she whispered, leaning beside me. "Peachy," I muttered, topping off my glass. Just loving how Olivia's taking credit for my work without even knowing it. Mia's eyes narrowed, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "You could tell them, you know. Right now. Walk out there and drop the bomb. Imagine their faces when they hear about your $75 million win." I snorted, the idea tempting but impossible. "Not yet," I said, swirling my wine. "Timing's gotta be perfect." "I want them to feel it." Mia grinned, her mischief matching mine. "You're evil." "I love it." She grabbed a cookie from a tray on the counter, taking a bite. "But seriously, you can't let them keep treating you like the family intern. You're a badass." "That lawsuit? It didn't just win money. It changed the game for companies like Olivia's." "I know," I said, my voice quieter now. "But they don't. And that's the problem." The kitchen door creaked open again. Grace stepped in, her face tired but soft. "Emily, honey, your dad's wondering where you went. He wants everyone for a toast." "Of course he does," I said, smoothing my jacket. "Can't miss Olivia's big moment, can we?" Grace flinched, her eyes dropping to the floor. I brushed past her, ignoring the pang in my chest. Back in the living room, the crowd was thicker, the air heavy with perfume and pride. Olivia stood by the fireplace, Sarah at her side, both basking in the glow of attention. I caught sight of my cousin's phone on a side table, still open to the news alert about my lawsuit. Carter and Brooks secures historic victory, it read. I stared at it, my heart racing. Soon, they'd all know. But for now, I'd let them bask in their ignorance. Revenge, after all, is a dish best served cold. And mine? It was chilling nicely. I took my place at the edge of the group, my smile tight but steady. The room buzzed with Olivia's triumph, but I felt something else brewing. A storm was coming, and I was ready to steer it. I needed to escape the suffocating glow of Olivia's spotlight. The living room, with its polished Chicago charm, felt like a stage I wasn't invited to perform on. I slipped upstairs, my heels muffled by the plush carpet, and pushed open the door to my old bedroom. The space wasn't mine anymore. It was a shrine to Olivia Harper, my sister, the family's golden star. Framed articles about Harper Enterprises lined the walls, her business school diploma hung proudly, and God help may a glittery macaroni frame from her third-grade art project still sat on the shelf. My childhood? Erased. I stood there, my wine glass still in hand, the bitter taste lingering. This room, in our family's suburban Chicago home, used to be my sanctuary. Now it was a museum of someone else's victories. I traced a finger along a dusty shelf, my mind pulling me back to when I was 12, braces and all, bursting with pride over my state science fair win. I'd built a prototype for a water filtration system, something that could help communities in need. Dad barely glanced at it. He was too busy driving to Olivia's debate tournament in Evanston. Next time, kid, he'd said. There was always a next time that never came. The door creaked behind me. Mia, my best friend and fellow lawyer, slipped in, her presence like a lifeline. Found you, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Hiding from the Olivia Harper parade? She gestured to a faded photo tucked in a corner, half hidden by Olivia's trophies. It was us at 13, grinning at a county fair. Look at you. Braces, big dreams. Bet you were already plotting world domination. I picked up the frame, the glass cool under my fingers. That was right after I won first place at the science fair, I said, my voice low. Dad didn't come. Olivia had a debate. He said her thing was more important. Mia's smile faded. Your filtration model was badass, though. I remember you explaining it to me. Not some volcano nonsense, actual innovation. Yeah, I said, setting the photo down harder than I meant to. The clink echoed in the quiet room. Nobody noticed. Footsteps approached, and my mom, Grace, appeared in the doorway, her silver earrings catching the hallway light. Emily, honey, she said softly, I figured I'd find you here. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room like she was seeing it for the first time. Your dad's downstairs, showing off Olivia's Forbes feature to everyone. Is that so? I muttered, crossing my arms. Did he mention my Northwestern law degree? Oh, wait, that's probably in the garage with the Christmas decorations. Grace sighed, her shoulders sagging. You know he's proud of you in his own way. Really? I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. When's the last time he asked about my cases? Or showed up to anything I did? I turned to the window, the Chicago skyline a distant blur. You know what he said when I told him I wanted to be a lawyer? He laughed. Said I should consider nursing. Something suitable. Mia tensed beside me, her lawyer instincts flaring. He's wrong, Em. You're a force. That $75 million lawsuit you just won? That's not just a case. It's a legacy. Grace's eyes softened, but her words faltered. Emily, he doesn't mean to. Doesn't mean to what? I cut her off, turning to face her. Make me feel like I'm invisible? Like everything I do is just background noise to Olivia's symphony. My voice trembled, but I didn't care. I've spent my whole life proving I'm more than the spare daughter, and nobody in this family sees it. Before Grace could answer, a voice boomed from downstairs. William, tell them how Olivia landed that merger last year. It was Sarah, Olivia's wife, her tone dripping with pride. Now that's a story. Dad's laugh followed, loud and warm. My girl showed how it's done. Born with a head for business, just like her grandpa. Grace hesitated, then touched my arm. I should check on the appetizers, she said, slipping out like she was fleeing a crime scene. I stared at the empty doorway, my chest tight. Mia broke the silence. You okay? I laughed, short and bitter. You know what's funny? When I was 14, I told Dad I'd be a lawyer no matter what he thought. He said I'd change my mind. I didn't. I changed my mind about needing his approval instead. Mia grinned, but her eyes were fierce. That's my girl. You built your own empire, M. Carter and Brooks? That's yours. Not Olivia's, not William's. Yours. I nodded, the fire in me flickering back to life. Downstairs, the laughter grew louder, Olivia's voice rising above it all. But up here, in this room full of someone else's glory, I felt something shift. I wasn't just the forgotten sister anymore. I was Emily Harper, and I was done waiting in the wings. I descended the stairs, the weight of my old bedroom's memories clinging to me like damp air. The living room of our Chicago suburban home buzzed with energy, the crowd orbiting my sister, Olivia, as if she were the sun. My wine glass felt heavy in my hand, the bitter taste still sharp on my tongue. I caught sight of James, Olivia's brother-in-law and business partner, by the fireplace. His eyes were glued to his phone, his brow furrowed. For a split second, he glanced up, locking eyes with me. My pulse quickened. Was he reading about my lawsuit? The $75 million one that nobody here seemed to notice? I shook off the thought and wove through the crowd, my navy suit brushing against relatives who barely acknowledged me. The chatter was relentless. Olivia this, Harper Enterprises that. My dad, William, stood by the grand piano, gesturing wildly as he recounted Olivia's latest triumph. She's got her grandpa's instincts, he said, his voice booming. Always knows when to strike. I lingered near the edge of the room, my best friend Mia at my side. She leaned in, her voice low. You see James's face? He's onto something. I followed her gaze. James was still scrolling, his thumb pausing now and then. My cousin's phone, left on a side table, caught my eye. The screen still glowed with the Chicago Tribune headline, Carter and Brooks secures historic $75 million settlement. I swallowed hard, my heart thumping. Emily, my mom, Grace, waved from across the room. We're taking a family photo. Come on. The crowd shuffled, forming a loose semicircle by the fireplace. Olivia and Sarah stood front and center, naturally. Dad clapped his hands, directing everyone like a stage manager. Emily, over there, he said, pointing to the far edge of the group. I froze, my heels rooted to the hardwood. The edge. Always the edge. Something snapped inside me, sharp and electric. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the chatter, I think I'll skip the photo. Got some case files to review tomorrow. The room stilled, heads turning. Mia tense beside me, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. William frowned, his bushy brows knitting together. Come on, Em. Your little cases can wait, can't they? His tone was light, but the words landed like a slap. Mia's jaw tightened, and I knew she was thinking of the $75 million I'd just won. Little cases, my ass. I smiled, sweet as honey. You're right, Dad. Some things are more important. I stepped back, leaning against the wall, my arms crossed. The professional photographer, hired for this impromptu gathering in our upscale Chicago home, adjusted his lens. Maybe we should get someone from Olivia's team in the shot, Dad suggested, oblivious to the spark he'd just ignited. The camera clicked, capturing Olivia's radiant smile, Sarah's poised elegance, and Dad's proud grin. I stayed where I was, a ghost in my own family's portrait. As the group dispersed, I caught James staring at his phone again. His eyes flicked to me, then back to the screen. My stomach twisted. He knew something. The party shifted gears, relatives drifting toward the dining room for dessert. I followed, my mind racing. Mia nudged me. That was bold, skipping the photo. You're stirring the pot, aren't you? Just warming it up, I muttered, my eyes on James. He was showing his phone to Sarah now, their heads bent together. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Chloe, my journalist friend at the Chicago Tribune. Breaking news just dropped. Your lawsuit's making waves. No name yet, but details are close enough to point fingers. Call me. My breath caught. Chloe had been digging into the ripple effects of my case. She'd warned me the story was big, but this was a bomb waiting to detonate. I slipped into the hallway, dialing her number. Chloe, what's in the article? I whispered. It's juicy, she said, her voice crackling with excitement. Doesn't name you, but it's got enough Carter and Brooks, consumer protection, 75 million. Anyone with half a brain will connect the dots, especially someone like James, who's neck-deep in your sister's company. I leaned against the wall, the cool plaster grounding me. You think he's figured it out? Oh, he's close, Chloe said. I saw him at the Tribune's gala last month. Guy's sharp. Keep an eye on him. I hung up, my pulse hammering. Back in the dining room, the mood was festive, the long table laden with pastries and coffee. Olivia held court at one end, laughing about some boardroom anecdote. I took a seat near Mia, my mind elsewhere. James was across the table, his phone now face down, but his eyes kept drifting to me. Sarah whispered something to him, her expression uneasy. Emily, you're awfully quiet, Sarah said, her smile tight. No courtroom stories to share? Or are your cases too small for this crowd? The jab landed, and a few relatives chuckled. Mia's fork clinked against her plate, her glare lethal. Oh, I've got stories, I said, my voice calm but edged. Just waiting for the right audience. Sarah blinked, caught off guard. James's eyes narrowed, like he was piecing together a puzzle. Before I could say more, Dad stood, raising his glass. To Olivia, he said, his voice warm. For making this family proud, as always. Glasses clinked, but I kept mine on the table, my fingers tight around the stem. Mia leaned in, her whisper fierce. You're gonna let them toast her while your win's literally saving her company? Not yet, I said, my eyes on James. He was typing now, his thumbs flying. Another text from Chloe buzzed in. James just searched your name with Carter and Brooks. He's close, real close. My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. The dining room glowed with candlelight, the family oblivious to the storm brewing. I glanced at Olivia, radiant and clueless, and felt a strange mix of pity and power. She had no idea her empire was standing on my shoulders. Nobody did it. I leaned back, sipping my wine. The article was out there, circling like a shark. James was sniffing around, and Chloe was ready to blow the lid off. I could feel the moment coming, the one where I'd step out of the shadows. For now, I'd let them laugh, let them toast, let them think they knew the whole story. My revenge was simmering, and it was almost ready to boil over. The dining room glowed with candlelight, the air thick with the scent of coffee and pastry. My sister, Olivia, stood at the head of the table in our Chicago suburban home, her champagne glass raised like a scepter. To family, she said, her voice warm, and to Harper Enterprises' best quarter yet. The room echoed her toast, glasses clinking in a chorus of approval. I sat at the far end, my own glass untouched, my heart pounding like a war drum. James, Olivia's brother-in-law, was still stealing glances at me, his phone now tucked away, but his eyes sharp with suspicion. My best friend, Mia, leaned close, her whisper fierce. This is it. Tell them. They're toasting Olivia for your win. Her words lit a fuse inside me, but I hesitated, my gaze flicking to my parents. William, my dad, beamed at Olivia, oblivious. Grace, my mom, caught my eye, her face soft with that familiar apologetic look. I was tired of those looks. Tired of waiting. Then James stood, his chair scraping the hardwood. Actually, he said, his voice cutting through the chatter, I think we should toast someone else. Every head turned. My stomach lurched. Family support is everything, right? He continued, his eyes locking onto mine. Even the quieter contributions matter. Olivia frowned, confused. What's that supposed to mean, James? I felt Mia's hand on my arm, urging me forward. My journalist friend, Chloe, who'd slipped into the room, gave me a nod from the corner, her phone ready to capture whatever came next. The Chicago Tribune article about my $75 million lawsuit hung over us like a storm cloud, and James was about to crack it open. Enough, I said, standing so fast my chair wobbled. My voice echoed, sharp and clear. I'm done standing on the sidelines. The room went silent, forks pausing midair. Olivia's glass hovered, her smile faltering. Dad's brows shot up, his mouth half open. I took a breath, the fire in my chest blazing. That best quarter, you're all toasting? The regulatory changes that saved Harper Enterprises? They didn't come from Olivia. They came from me. A gasp rippled through the room. Sarah, Olivia's wife, covered her mouth. James leaned back, a faint smirk playing on his lips, like he'd been waiting for this. Mia was practically vibrating beside me, her grin fierce. What are you talking about, Emily? Dad said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Your little cases. Little. I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. I just won a $75 million lawsuit with Carter and Brooks. 3 years of my life, fighting one of the biggest corporations in Illinois. That's what changed the industry. That's what kept Olivia's company alive. I pointed at my sister, who looked like she'd been slapped. You're welcome, by the way. Grace's eyes filled with tears, her hands clasped tight. Emily, honey, why didn't you tell us? Why? I snapped, turning to her. Because none of you ever asked. Not once. You were too busy praising Olivia's every move to notice I was reshaping an entire industry. My voice trembled, but I didn't care. The truth was out, raw and jagged, and I wasn't holding back. Olivia sank into her chair, her champagne forgotten. I had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said, my tone softer, but still edged. Nobody did. You all assumed my work was some cute hobby. Little cases, right, Dad? While you bragged about Olivia's mergers, I was in court, winning battles you'll never understand. William's face reddened, his hands gripping the table. That's not fair, Emily. We've always supported. Supported? Mia cut in, her lawyer voice slicing through. You called her career a little lawyer thing today, William. You skipped her law school graduation for Olivia's company retreat. Support? Try again. The room was a graveyard, silent except for Grace's quiet sobs. Sarah stared at her plate, her usual poise crumbling. James cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. She's right. Those regulatory changes? They're why Harper Enterprises survived the market shift. Emily's lawsuit handed you a lifeline, Olivia. Olivia's eyes met mine, wide and glassy. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I shrugged, the weight of years pressing down. You didn't want to know. None of you did. I glanced at Dad, his proud facade cracking. Every family dinner, every gathering, it was Olivia's show. My wins? My $75 million case? Just noise in the background. Chloe stepped forward, her journalist instincts kicking in. This is one hell of a story, she said, her voice light but pointed. The forgotten sister saving the family empire. Chicago's gonna eat this up. Chloe, I warned, but a smile tugged at my lips. The truth was out, and it felt like shedding a skin I'd worn too long. Dad stood, his voice hoarse. Emily, I don't know what to say. Then don't, I said, my tone steady. Don't say you're proud now just because it's public. That's not what I want. What do you want? Grace asked, her voice barely a whisper. I looked around the room, Dad's stunned face, Olivia's regret, Sarah's discomfort, James's quiet respect. I want you to get it, I said. What it's like to fight for something huge, knowing nobody cares. To win a case that changes lives, while my own family calls it little. That's what I want you to understand. The silence was deafening, broken only by a phone buzzing. Chloe glanced at her screen, her eyes widening. "It's the Tribune," she said. "They're asking for a comment on the lawsuit." Words spreading. "Let it," I said, straightening my jacket. The storm I'd been brewing was here, and I was ready to ride it. Olivia reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Not yet," I told her. "You don't get to play prod sister now." I caught Mia's eye, her nod saying it all. "You did it." The dining room, once Olivia's stage, was mine now. And I wasn't giving it back. The dining room was a battlefield, the air heavy with the wreckage of my words. My $75 million lawsuit, the truth I'd buried for years, lay bare on the table like a shattered glass. My family sat frozen in our Chicago suburban home, their faces a mix of shock and shame. Olivia, my sister, stared at her untouched champagne, her usual confidence gone. My dad, William, gripped the edge of the table, looking older than I'd ever seen him. My mom, Grace, wiped tears from her cheeks, her pearl necklace glinting in the candlelight. I stood tall, my heart still racing, but lighter somehow. The truth was out, and I wasn't backing down. Mia, my best friend, squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes fierce with pride. Chloe, the journalist, scribbled in her notebook, her smile sharp. "This is front-page material, M," she said, her voice low. "The Tribune's gonna have a field day." Olivia cleared her throat, her voice shaky. "Emily, I don't know how to fix this. But I want to try." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I'm sorry. Truly. I should have asked about your work. I should have seen you." I crossed my arms, my jaw tight. "Sorry doesn't erase years of being invisible, Olivia. You don't get to wave a wand and make it okay because you feel bad now." She flinched, but nodded. "I know. I want to do better." William stood, his chair scraping the hardwood. "Emily, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough. "We've been awful. I've been awful. I was so caught up in Olivia's wins, I didn't see yours. But I'm seeing you now. That lawsuit? It's incredible." I laughed, short and bitter. "Now it's incredible? Because it's in the open? Because it saved Olivia's company." I shook my head, the fire in me still burning. "I didn't do it for your approval, Dad. I did it because it was right. The fact that it helped Harper Enterprises? That's just karma." James, Olivia's brother-in-law, leaned forward, his voice calm but pointed. "Karma or not, Emily, your case kept us afloat. The board needs to know. The shareholders, too. This changes everything." "Does it?" I said, my eyes narrowing. "Or does it just change how you see me now that it's convenient?" Sarah, Olivia's wife, spoke up, her usual poise faltering. "Emily, we didn't mean to make you feel less. We've always cared." "Cared?" Mia snapped, her lawyer voice cutting like a blade. "You called her work a little lawyer thing, an hour ago, Sarah. You rolled your eyes when she mentioned Carter and Brooks. That's not caring. That's dismissing." The room fell silent again, the weight of Mia's words sinking in. Grace reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Don't," I said softly. "Don't tell me you're proud now. Not when you didn't care before." Chloe's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening. "The Tribune's story just went live," she said. "Anonymous lawyer behind industry-shaking lawsuit. No name yet, but it's trending. Chicago's buzzing." "Let it buzz," I said, straightening my jacket. "I'm done hiding." Olivia stood, her hands trembling. "Emily, I have an idea. It's not enough, but it's a start. Join our board at Harper Enterprises. Not as an employee and independent member. We need your expertise, your integrity." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You're offering me a seat at your table now? After all this?" "Not out of pity," she said quickly. "Because you've earned it. More than any of us." I glanced at Mia, who nodded, her grin sly. "Take it, Em." Make them squirm from the inside. I'll think about it, I said, my tone cool but open. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the wall I'd built. William stepped closer, his eyes glassy. Emily, I want to do better. I'll be at your next trial. Front row. Every day. I tilted my head, skeptical. Even if Olivia has a board meeting? He didn't hesitate. She can handle it. I want to see my daughter in action. Grace smiled through her tears. Both of us, honey. We'll be there. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The apology was late, but it was something. A start, maybe? Chloe looked up from her notebook, her voice cheerful. This is gonna be one hell of a follow-up. Family drama, legal victory, redemption, arc Pulitzer vibes. Slow down, Chloe, I said, but I couldn't help smiling. The room felt different now, like the air had shifted. The hierarchy that had crushed me for years was crumbling, and I was standing on the rubble. Sarah cleared her throat, her voice soft. The press will want a statement. We should get ahead of this, Olivia. Acknowledge Emily's role. Now you want to talk about my work? I said, a laugh escaping. Now it's worth a press release? Olivia met my gaze, her expression earnest. It always was, Em. We just didn't see it. I didn't see it. I held her stare, the years of resentment swirling between us. Then start seeing, I said. All of you. The dining room was quiet, save for the faint hum of phones buzzing with notifications. The story was spreading, and soon, Chicago would know the truth. Emily Harper, the forgotten sister, was the force behind Harper Enterprises' survival. I looked at my family, Dad's regret, Mom's hope, Olivia's guilt, Sarah's unease, James's respect. They were finally listening. Mia leaned in, her whisper warm. You did it, Em. You flipped the script. Not yet, I said, my eyes on the horizon. But I'm getting there. The storm was still brewing, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was the one steering it now, and I was ready for whatever came next. The conference room in downtown Chicago buzzed with anticipation, the city's skyline gleaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. I stood outside, smoothing my navy suit, my heart steady but electric. Mia, my best friend and fellow lawyer, adjusted my lapel, her grin fierce. Ready, Em? She asked, her eyes sparkling. You're about to own this room. I've been ready my whole life, I said, pushing open the glass door. Camera flashes popped like fireworks as I stepped inside, the air thick with the hum of reporters and board members. My family was there: William, Grace, Olivia, Sarah, James seated in the front row, their faces a mix of pride and unease. For the first time, they weren't center stage. I was. I took my place at the podium, the Carter and Brooks Law logo gleaming behind me. Olivia stood nearby, representing Harper Enterprises, but she stepped aside, giving me the floor. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. My dad, William, watched closely, his usual commanding presence softened. I cleared my throat, my voice steady. Good morning. Today, we're announcing a historic partnership between Carter and Brooks Law and Harper Enterprises. The room leaned in as I spoke, detailing my $75 million lawsuit, the one that reshaped an industry and saved my sister's company. This victory wasn't just about money, I said, my eyes scanning the crowd. It was about justice, about holding giants accountable. And yes, it ensured companies like Harper Enterprises could thrive. I glanced at Olivia, who nodded, her expression genuine. My mom, Grace, dabbed her eyes, her tears different now, proud, not guilty. William sat up straight, hanging on every word, a far cry from the man who'd once called my work little. Olivia stood quietly, no longer chasing the spotlight. I felt a strange calm, like the world had finally righted itself. I opened the floor to questions, and hands shot up. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune stood, her voice sharp. Ms. Harper, how does it feel to save your sister's company while staying anonymous for so long? I smiled, the weight of years lifting. It feels like justice, I said, my tone light but firm. Not just in the courtroom, but here now, standing in my truth. The room buzzed, cameras clicking. I pointed to another reporter. Yes, you. Miss Harper, he said, how do you feel knowing your sister's success was built on your work? I glanced at Olivia, who stepped to the mic before I could answer. I feel ashamed, she said simply, her voice raw. Ashamed I overlooked my sister's brilliance for years. But mostly, I'm proud. Prouder than I've ever been of any deal I've closed. The room erupted, reporters scribbling furiously. I met Olivia's eyes, a silent understanding passing between us. Another journalist called out. Will you join Harper Enterprises, Ms. Harper? No, I said, my smile widening. I'm happy leading my team at Carter and Brooks, fighting my battles. But our companies will move forward together. I paused, glancing at Olivia. As equals. Equals, Olivia echoed, her voice strong. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift in a family once defined by hierarchy. The press conference ended, and the room cleared out, leaving just my family, Mia and Chloe, who was still taking notes for her next Tribune piece. In the quiet, William approached, his steps hesitant. Emily, he said, his voice low. I've been searching for the right words. Don't strain yourself, Dad, I said, no bitterness in my tone, just truth. No, let me finish. He stood taller, his eyes meeting mine. I spent years chasing the wrong kind of success. I was so focused on Olivia, I missed the real strength right in front of me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned it, but I'm begging for a chance to do better. Grace took his hand, then mine, her grip warm. Both of us, she said. We'll be at your next trial, honey. Front row. I tested them, half smiling. Even if Olivia has a big meeting? William didn't flinch. She'll manage. I want to see my daughter in action. Olivia stepped forward, her expression earnest. I meant what I said about the board. Independent member, your terms. We need you. I looked at Mia, who nodded, her grin sly. I'll consider it, I said. But it's my call. More than we deserve, James admitted, his usual reserve softened. Chloe looked up, her pen pausing. This is gonna be one hell of a follow-up. Family healing after a legal bombshell. No, I corrected, my voice firm. Family learning to see clearly. Grace smiled through fresh tears. As we packed up, William touched my arm. That photo you mentioned, Emily. Not for the press. Just for us. To mark the moment everything changed. I looked at them, Dad's hope, Mom's warmth, Olivia's respect, Sarah's humility, James's quiet admiration, Mia's unwavering loyalty, Chloe's eager pen. All right, I said. But this time, I'm not on the edge. Never again, Olivia said, her voice steady. You're where you belong, center stage. We posed, me at the heart of the group, the Chicago skyline framing us. The camera flashed, capturing not just a moment, but a new beginning. Success, I realized, wasn't just about winning cases or proving them wrong. It was about giving them a chance to prove they could be right. Ready? Chloe asked, her camera raised. Ready, I said, standing tall, no longer the forgotten sister. The flash went off, and I knew this time, everyone was paying attention.